with our staff, it's fascinating to meet staffers who first came in through a workshop or a class and then became so engaged with LIBRE, they believe so strongly in the mission that they decided to apply either to be a part-time staffer, eventually a full-time staffer, and now they're managing a strategy for an entire region. One example of that is Jeffrey Baldwin. He's our director for the LIBRE Institute, and he became engaged originally as a volunteer. So we see that in so many states, and I think it's fascinating, but it's also a testament to the need that's out in these communities. Jeffrey in particular was an attorney, and left that to come work for us. So he started off, as a strategic director in North Carolina. So it's fascinating. And then even with me, for example, I always knew I would come back to the LIBRE initiative. I just didn't know when or in what capacity. But when I think about my personal story, I was born in New York City.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential.
Welcome to the American Potential Podcast. I'm your host, David Fromm. Have you ever heard about a bill being debated in your state legislature or in Congress and thought, there's really a better way to do that, or that's going to make my taxes go up? Do you ever think about, reaching out to your representative about it? If not, you're really not alone. A lot of people don't realize just how important their voice can be in shaping policy. The truth is, lawmakers are working on dozens of issues at any given time. And, they can't be experts on all of them. That's where you come in. Whether you work in a certain industry, have a personal story tied to an issue, or just don't want to pay more in taxes, your perspective could help your representative. It might even change their mind. That's exactly why the LIBRE Initiative is heading to Washington, D.C. this week. They're bringing stories from the communities they live and work in, stories that can cut through the noise and remind members of Congress what real people are facing back home. I want to welcome to the podcast Sandra Benitez, who is the executive director for the LIBRE Initiative, to share what issues they'll be talking about to lawmakers this week. Sandra, welcome.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Always a pleasure to have you here, and great to see you. I'm so excited for our conversation, and I'm excited for what LIBRE is going to be doing here this week in DC. But for starters, if some of our listeners are new to us or haven't heard of the LIBRE Initiative, can you share what you all do?
Yeah, absolutely. So the LIBRE Initiative was founded almost 15 years ago. I always joke next year is our big quinceañera. And it was founded by Daniel Garza. So just a quick backstory on him, because I think it really gives perspective on why the organization was founded. Daniel grew up, living in different states, and he ended up serving both at the local level in city council and then eventually at the White House under President Bush. And through his tenure, he saw that there really was an organization that was reaching out to the Latino community and connecting them with principled policy perspectives year round, right? And at that time in the Hispanic community, it was primarily political campaigns. They'd go into the Latino communities through November and then leave. So LIBRE was really founded out of necessity. And we know that Hispanics are freedom-oriented. They're coming to this country for better opportunities and basically for better economic living and access to education. So it was founded about 15 years ago in one state, Texas. Now we're in over 15 chapter states, and we mobilize Hispanics all over the country.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love Daniel's story. When he tells it, it's so inspirational.
Yeah.
And one of the things I love also about LIBRE, I've had a great opportunity to call a lot of LIBRE staff members friends and colleagues. So many individuals who work for us, and then certainly folks who volunteer with us, are just have phenomenal stories themselves, and it's really wonderful. So, but personally for you, how were you introduced to LIBRE, and why did you want to come work for them?
Yeah, so I guess I'll backtrack a little bit. I was a political science major in college. Had no interest, ironically, in American politics. I thought, I'm just getting my degree. I ended up interning for a governor and working on his reelection campaign. And I was there about 2 years. It was exciting because I was overseeing Hispanic engagement for him. We ended up getting 51% of the Hispanic vote in a blue state, which was, again, really exciting. But then I think I was looking for something different more experience and something that was a little more fulfilling. So at that time, I had a mentor who was serving as a regional director for the LIBRE initiative, and she encouraged me to come out and apply. And she said, we have openings in Ohio and Southern Virginia, so Virginia Beach, Richmond. I applied and obviously accepted the role. But one thing I'll mention, David, that's very different with the LIBRE initiative from my previous work on political campaigns is we were talking about specific policies and connecting the Hispanic community to those policy and outcomes versus talking about a candidate. The second thing that was different is we were hosting grassroots community events, whether it was civic engagement classes, ESL courses, things that were going to remove barriers for the Hispanic community versus just going in and campaigning on a specific candidate. So for me, it was fascinating to find an organization like this. And I felt that I was truly empowering my community versus, hey, go vote for this person and calling it a day. So it was a great time down in Virginia Beach and Richmond.
So then you started on the ground working as a staff member, and then now you're the executive director running the show and doing a great job of it, I might add.
Thank you. I know it's been an amazing trajectory. I for sure am blessed. But I think, for every story like myself, our team has dozens and dozens of staffers, volunteers who share the same story and the same motivation to empower our community. And I think that's why we wake up every day doing what we do, because we see the need. We know our community is aligned, and really our main purpose is to be that conduit between them and our members of Congress or others who are making decisions that impact their day-to-day life.
Yeah, so that takes us to the fly-in event that you're doing this week. So we have LIBRE staff members coming to DC to meet with members of Congress. Maybe tell us about what that fly-in event is like and what you're looking to accomplish.
Yeah. So absolutely. And for those who might not know, a lot of organizations have a fly-in, but basically is when an organization will bring in either staff or activists from all over the country to meet with members of Congress. So we have 13 chapter states. We're going to bring in a few dozen of our strategic directors and staff to come and meet with our members. And just for perspective, last time we came to do this a couple years ago, our goal was initially to have 100 meetings over the course of 2 days, and we ended up exceeding that. We ended up having over 200 meetings, 60 of which were directly with members of Congress. And the reason I mentioned that is I think it shows our members care about the Latino community. They're engaged, and they want to listen to what we have to say, right? So one meeting that stands out in particular, I was meeting with a member from Wisconsin, and halfway through our meeting, he takes out his phone and starts showing me media hits of him on Univision and Telemundo doing media in Spanish. And this is not a Hispanic member, but he has a growing Hispanic community in his district. So it's really a good way for us to kind of share back the feedback with them, thank them for either voting or sponsoring any piece of legislation that the Latino community is aligned with, and then also bring any resources or information to their attention. So, for example, our sister organization, the LIBRE Institute, conducts an annual poll. And what we saw before the One Big Beautiful Bill was passed was that 90% of Hispanics were against a tax hike, and that they felt it would be really breaking for their day-to-day budget. And so that's one thing that we, for example, lobbied on. So it's going to be great. We're hoping to have over 100 meetings over the course of 2 days.
That's awesome. So Congress, recently was able to get the One Big Beautiful Bill passed and over the line. What were some of the things in that major piece of legislation that LIBRE is supported?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll take it back to 2017 when TCJA was first enacted. This directly benefited the Hispanic community. After it was passed, we saw record low unemployment rate for Hispanics, and it really stimulated the economy for them, right? They were opening businesses at a higher rate than previous years, and they were really able to kind of give back and pour back into the economy. So what we supported in particular was protecting the standard deduction, locking in the tax rates, and protecting the 1099 small business expensing. But like I said, I think when speaking to Latinos on the ground through our grassroots events that we've been having all year round on this, a lot of them were fearful if we didn't pass this bill, they were going to see higher taxes, but then it was going to prevent them from really chasing those economic opportunities, whether it's starting that next small business or sending their kid to that summer camp, right? So these are real Americans, and Latinos are no different than other Americans who really are trying to save and provide for their families.
So, I always associate with LIBRE, one of the things I think that they're so powerful in bringing to life for people is it's the embodiment of the American dream. There's so many folks who work on staff or activists who interact with us who have just done that in their life. Like, they've lived it. They some of them come from communist countries even, or they grown up without much at all and have created amazing businesses and are just succeeding in a great way. Great families. So I always love a lot of LIBRE stories, but the economy ends up being one of the core issue, and because it leads to achieving the American dream. So what are you all going to be talking to lawmakers about with regard to the economy?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we're going to be thanking a lot of our members for voting for the One Big Beautiful Bill. I think that's number one, right? A lot of them, after looking at so much legislation, sometimes it's difficult to say, okay, we're voting for this or against it. So one, we're going to thank them on that. But outside of that, along the economic line, the REINS Act. So what that does is it basically, previous to this, right, federal agencies would try to regulate, and what this does is it gives that authority back to Congress. So, for example, if there's a federal regulation that's being passed and it has over 100 million in economic impact annually, this will require congressional approval. And I think what a lot of Americans don't realize is this is what the founding fathers intended. They never intended for these types of regulations to come out of federal agencies. So that's a big win, not only for Latinos, but for all Americans. So we're there to basically remind Congress of that. And then other than that, the DOJGAR Act as well. So with that piece of legislation, it's basically requiring better accounting of how federal funds are being spent. What we found was last year alone, there was over 160 billion in improper payments due to clerical mistakes and administrative mistakes. So these are common sense things, right? If you're working on your personal household budget, you would make sure you have good accounting, and you would make sure you check, either with your partner or whoever's running your home with you. So it's no different with government, right? It's just us making sure that we have those systems in place to save the American taxpayer money.
Yeah, those are great things that we've talked a lot about on the show. Each of those priorities. I mean, folks, if you're watching this and you want to go back and see an in-depth episode or 4 on the REINS Act, or certainly DOJ. We have some more. I think we're coming up on our 14th, 15th episode on DOJ. But they're such important issues. I mean, I think you hit on exactly why those things are important, especially REINS, is we're restoring kind of the constitutional balance with those, with that kind of legislation where, we're saying, hey, legislators should be the ones who are authorizing large expenditures, not just kind of semi-unaccountable, not always unaccountable, bureaucrats and agencies. Yeah,
well, they're not elected, right? So why would they have full authority over that? So, yeah, it makes sense. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I go back to you really associating pursuing the American dream with LIBRE's voice. Are there other issues or other things that you think Congress should be working on that really will help people achieve their American dream? Because I think a lot of people feel like it's getting harder and harder, and it just from decades ago, it seems harder and harder. So what are some of the things that Congress can do to turn those dreams into reality?
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I'll mention, David, in our LIBRE Institute poll, what we found was that over 70% of Hispanics still believe the American dream is attainable. So you have a community that's really excited to be here. They're excited for the opportunity, right? And we just have to get out of the way, or government has to get out of the way. So I think, we'll be speaking about a few different things related to healthcare, better access to telehealth, et cetera. But I think at a very, very high level, members have to focus on how to make it easier for all Americans, including Hispanics, to prosper, right? And that includes removing burdensome regulations, whether it's occupational licensing, and then also just making it easier for them to conduct business, right? So Hispanics, for example, start businesses at a much higher rate than any other demographic. Right now, it's estimated that there are over 4.7 billion Hispanic-owned businesses in the country. And we want to make it easier for them to do that and prosper. And even down at the state level, LIBRE has focused on very specific pieces of legislation. So I'll give you a quick example here. In Arizona, our team there, in conjunction with Americans for Prosperity, lobbied on the tamale bill, which basically made it easier for folks who have home kitchens to sell food, street food, right? Street vendors. And it removed that barrier for them so they could go and earn some income and prosper. So I would say anything that either simplifies the tax code, like one big beautiful bill, or removes burdensome regulation. And then from there, that allows these families to focus on other things that are needed, right? To be successful, whether it's education, or better access to healthcare, et cetera.
That's great. I mean, we had the opportunity a few months ago to talk to Monet from Arizona, a LIBRE strategic director, a very successful one, and just a great member of our team, and about the tamale bill, and it was pretty fabulous. I love to hear those kind of stories. Kind of just empowering people, getting government out of the way, and saying, "Hey, go provide for your community, go make a living, go innovate." It was great.
Yeah.
So sometimes we hear that Latino issues are American issues. I think sometimes people bifurcate them, but I think, when you hear that, what's your sense? And maybe what does the polling tell us even?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been fascinating. I've spent about the last 12, 13 years primarily working in the Hispanic space, trying to understand the audience, working on various political campaigns, different advocacy groups. So I've really seen a trend where time and time again, Latinos or Hispanics care about the same exact issues that the rest of the country cares about. Yes, immigration and some of these other pieces are important, but usually it's always the economy as the number one issue. And I'll give you an example with the LIBRE Institute. What we saw the last 3 years that the LIBRE Institute conducted polling was that economy and inflation was at the top of the list. And again, that's why passing the one big beautiful bill and signing that into law has been so important. So, if there are any listeners who want to build these relationships with Hispanics, and who want to, get them to come out and volunteer with either Americans for Prosperity or the LIBRE initiative, I would say, reminder is the same issues are affecting you, right? Whether it's the economy, or lack of educational options, are the same exact things are affecting Hispanics. So, taking that first step and just meeting with them is key.
Yeah. So if someone wanted to get involved with the LIBRE initiative, what's the best place for them to go to do so?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a website and it's blibre.org. And then you can also follow us on Twitter. So it's the LIBRE Initiative, at the LIBRE Initiative, and just follow us there. Sign up. You could join to sign up our newsletter, or even check out who the best point of contact is in your state. We are in 13 chapter states, but one thing I always tell people is that we do work and do outreach in many, many other states. So for example, with this fly-in that we're doing, it's very exciting. Last time we met with members of Congress representing over 40 states. So even if we don't have a chapter in your state, I encourage you to get involved, and we'll find a role for you on our team. And in the country, there are over 62 million Hispanics, and they're eager to get involved. They're eager to be connected to the political and policy legislative process, right? But it starts by taking that first step. So I encourage everyone to sign up.
So I've, like I said earlier, I really love a lot of the stories that I hear from either activists or staff members. Do you have any kind of personal stories from staff members or activists that you've come across as executive director that stick out, that are kind of your favorites?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I'll say two things on this. One, with our staff, it's fascinating to meet staffers who first came in through a workshop or a class and then became so engaged with LIBRE, they believe so strongly in the mission that they decided to apply either to be a part-time staffer, eventually a full-time staffer, and now they're managing a strategy for an entire region. One example of that is Jeffrey Baldwin. He's our director for the LIBRE Institute, and he became engaged originally as a volunteer. So we see that in so many states, and I think it's fascinating, but it's also a testament to the need that's out in these communities. Jeffrey in particular was an attorney, and left that to come work for us. So he started off, as a strategic director in North Carolina. So it's fascinating. And then even with me, for example, I always knew I would come back to the LIBRE initiative. I just didn't know when or in what capacity. But when I think about my personal story, I was born in New York City, in a high poverty area, to a single mom, had me and my sister when she was a teenager. And I always think there's no other country where someone like me, born into that situation, could be successful and really use the opportunity given to kind of get out of that situation. And it's fascinating. And I think that's why I've always felt the need to kind of give back, right? To really empower my community to advance and achieve their version of the American dream.
That's fabulous. I didn't, I get inspired every time. Just doing this podcast, I was telling you, this is kind of one of the joys of my life, that I get to listen to great stories. But I talk to just super interesting, amazing people who have great stories like you, and get to soak them in. It's just good for my soul. Selfishly, hopefully folks listening to it.
I know. And you know what, David, when I go to field events, I feel the same way, right? Because I know our staffers, but when I got to speak to activists who are attending our events, and learning about whether it's financial literacy classes or some of our civics classes, or even just learning how some of these policies affect their day-to-day life, and you spend time with them one-on-one, it really does motivate you, because it's easy, I'm based in DC, it's easy to wonder, like, how are my decisions affecting the lives of all these Hispanic Americans? But they are, and it's really motivating. And like I said, for every one story, there are dozens and dozens more of folks who are benefiting, because we're going out, we're knocking on their doors, and then we're coming back and meeting with legislators here and sharing those stories.
So as we close out, for our Spanish-speaking listeners, LIBRE also has a podcast.
Yes.
What's the name of that podcast, and what do you all discuss on it?
Yeah, so it's called Sabor a Freedom, which translates to Taste of Freedom. And really, on the surface, it seems less policy focused, but really we have various guests on there who all have compelling stories, but really shared their story of freedom, right? And again, how the freedom and opportunity that's provided in this country has allowed them to achieve their American dream. And we've had LIBRE staffers on there. We've also had celebrities from, Latin America, famous musicians. And, the common thread is that all of them recognize, what our founding fathers laid out has enabled them to go achieve their American dream. So it's really exciting. It isn't fully in Spanish. So for any listeners who want to brush up on their Spanish or are Spanish speakers, I encourage you to check it out.
That's great. I'll have to do that. I've talked to Cesar, and we actually recorded next to each other at our all staff meeting. It was super fun. They're great.
I know. And Cesar is great. And, he does a lot of our media, but he's a great host and great at finding, like you said, those personal stories to amplify.
Yeah. Whenever we're both hosting podcasts, I'm always the second best looking dude on the, on the podcast.
I know. That's so funny.
Yeah. Well, Sandra, thank you so much for coming on and talking about what LIBRE is doing this week with the fly-in. I hope it's an amazing success. I'm so excited for the conversations you all are going to have with legislators and the different.
Yeah. Well, thank you, David, for having me. And I'm excited to be back on soon. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure that happens. So I also want to let all you know that while LIBRE is in town, they're going to record 2 conversations they are having with lawmakers, and we will share those in the coming weeks. Folks, if you like this episode and would like to stay connected with the podcast, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, as well as following us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And always remember, liberty and freedom are easily taken for granted. Don't take it for granted. Go out there and defend freedom and liberty. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.